Hello and welcome back. Thank you for joining me on the first episode of the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. This series is an extension of the Talking Leadership podcast series, of which I'd like to thank again all of my guests for sharing their leadership pathways and their stories with my listeners. You helped me create over 200 episodes of the podcast, and Talking Leadership TV is an extension of that work. A lot of content to come around key leadership issues, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you all. But let's get into today's podcast. So my guest today is Annette Demosthenous. She's a career development practitioner with an extensive history in leadership and non-leadership roles across multiple industries, which include education, engineering, mining, manufacturing, building and construction, superannuation and finance, agriculture and primary industry more generally. Annette's curiosity, passion for exploring and desire to be a lifelong learner has seen her turn her focus to university studies. In March of last year, Annette finally took the leap which she's always dreamed of embarking on the next phase of her own career journey. She's commenced a Bachelor of Psychology with honours through the University of Southern Queensland, transitioning to full-time study in September of 2022. As a mature age learner, Annette comes to university with a knowledge of where she has interest rather than using it as an exploratory process. She believes in the need to educate oneself to stay empowered, youthful, relevant and engaged in one's community and life in general. With Annette's love of connecting with people and her intrinsic desire to seek knowledge, she looks to her degree as a way to gain further understanding and insight so she can continue to be of service, and sees education as a way to future-proof her ability to work irrespective of age or location. Today's topic area, which Annette's bio alluded to, is lifelong learning, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. So over to Annette for our discussion today on lifelong learning. G'day, Annette. Thanks for joining me again, mate. This is the first, as I said in the introduction, the first of the new Talking Leadership TV podcast, and I'm trying as much as I can to move now to very specific topic areas around leadership and issues that have come up in the conversations that I've had. And your journey was particularly interesting to me in that you've done some things and gone back to do some further education, but I'll leave you to discuss that as we go through the questions here. But let me do a little bit of scene setting if I could, and I'll get your perspective on this. So in 2020, the University of Melbourne posted a blog titled "Lifelong Learning is the New Order," and associated with that blog, Associate Professor of Economics Michael Coeli said the following: "Now people in many jobs are being asked to update on a very regular basis to keep up to date with what's going on in their field. In other words, lifelong learning, while not a new phenomenon, is becoming the norm." I'll get your perspectives on that in a second. And to define what it is we're talking about today, because it is around how lifelong learning fits into that leadership landscape. Alan Kaplan in 2016 defined lifelong learning as an approach that it's an educational phenomenon that includes all life processes from birth to death and all activities that aim to develop an individual's knowledge, skills, and competencies. It's also been described as a process that includes a rapid change through which individuals acquire competencies in different areas during their lives. So start with the first bit. Do you think lifelong learning is critical for your journey as a professional person, Annette?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yes, I do. As a professional person, I think lifelong learning is essential because you change. You change the landscape of where you're working. That changes. People that you're working with, they change. So in order to stay up to date and current, lifelong learning is essential. And I think you also develop different areas of interest as well as you progress through your life. So to be able to deal with what's coming at us in the workplace and in life in general, you have to learn. I think you never stop learning, really.
Yeah, I've it's been put to me in that way, and I'd like to get a perspective from you if I can. From your learning journey, what has that looked like beyond schooling for you? So beyond that formal element of K to 12, whatever it is at the moment. What's that look like for you?
So for me, it was actually different from, I guess, some others in that I left school quite early. Back in the day, I was a year 10 leaver and went on to business school and got skills there, and then was out in the workplace. So the majority of my learning for a long time was on the job, through experience, through working with different companies, choosing different directions to go in. And I kind of fell into one thing or the other. And it hasn't been until later in life where I've kind of honed the skills that I have and realised where my strengths are and the area that I kind of like to operate in, that then I've gone, okay, now I want to find out more. And I've been very strategic in the type of learning and education that I've gone after. So it's been experienced and on the job first, and now the more formal training is and the education is happening.
So in some senses, Annette, your view of learning may have changed over time, and it sounds like it did. Let's get deeper into the weeds a little bit as to why that was. So did you see others changing career paths and wondering, hey, I could give that a go? Or did you get to a point where you hit a brick wall and you were thinking, well, I need to do something else on board with maybe board's not the right word, but looking for a different career pathway? What was the light bulb moment for you, if there was one?
I think there's been a couple, and I think the other element that really influences what happens is normal life. So what happens in your life experience as you go along. So whether you become a parent, whether you're married, whether you're divorced, whether you move, all of those transitional periods that change your life in a rather big way also contribute. So for me, I ended up being a single mum and decided that I wanted to do something different. So it was quite a while after I'd been working for a long time that I went, what am I going to be doing for the rest of my life? So I started on a learning journey and discovered that I actually liked learning. It wasn't something that I had to do. So when you said before about my perspective on learning, when I was in the compulsory education stage, it was because I had to. The desire that I have now is because I want to. So that's the difference, is that I'm interested in something and I want to find out more and develop more in specific areas. And they have been triggered by life events in my particular case. The study that I'm doing now has been because of reflecting back and, again, other life changes that have happened and just going, okay, what do I want the rest of my career journey to look like? I've had short periods where I haven't worked or I've done something else, where I went and studied yoga and did those kind of things. And I realised that I actually like to be useful and I can always see myself wanting to contribute. So how can I future-proof myself so that I can always be able to be of service or contribute? That was one of the key triggers that started that thinking on, okay, well, what is it? Where could I go that I can go in and I know that I can continue to learn and continue to develop myself and still, doesn't matter how old I am, still be able to work.
Yeah, a couple of things. Age should never be a barrier. I think we're both in that cohort in going into our 50s and looking back at a lifetime of being in the workplace and doing both formal and informal learning. I have no way to how to tease out whether the informal learning I've had has been more critical to me than my formal learning. And I've said this before on the podcast and I'll say it again. I have no discernible skills other than an ability to sit down and read and write some essays and get some formal qualification. So that's the pathway that I took. Interesting that you said, well, I did some yoga. Well, that's a form of learning that's not formalized. You don't have to go to uni or TAFE or some other formal institution to learn it. And this slightly off track, but I think it's still related to what you've done, is do you think those experiences of learning that weren't formal have been a catalyst to do other things? So when you did the yoga, did that open your thinking to other things or not?
Definitely, yes, because the desire to explore that pathway, and it was extensive learning. I spent probably 4 years going through different yoga courses and specialising in a certain area, and it started this thirst of, oh, I can actually do this. So one, it gave me the confidence to go, yes, it is something that I'm capable of doing, and it opened my eyes to going, wow, I can actually do this. There are other things out there. What might that look like? And then changing of jobs and etc. has also contributed as well, and have kind of made me turn my head and go, okay, I'm going to move away from that and add in this bit. So it's been more of a selection as I go along, rather than just going, oh, I'm just going to go here and see what happens. It's been more selective. So that those informal learning definitely have triggered, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for that. Annette, let me bring this, if I can, to lifelong learning and organisation. So I'll ask two questions, and here's the first one. Mm-hmm. What's your experience of work taught you about an organisation's commitment to lifelong learning? So I know, and you don't have to list the organisations, because I will put a link in the video description here on the other podcast sessions that you've helped me with, a one-on-one that we did and a panel session. And again, without naming the organisations, do you think they've been committed to the idea of lifelong learning or not, or somewhere in between?
I think they have. I think I've been fortunate to be involved with organisations that are passionate about education and growth, professional development and growth. So I think the organisations that I have worked with have definitely been supportive of it, and in some cases have driven that with the direction that they have wanted to go. There's been gaps of knowledge, so in order to fill those gaps, you have to upskill. So yeah, definitely.
Second question then, is lifelong learning a shared responsibility? And why, context for asking this question is, I was of the mindset that it's completely up to the individual learner what they do or don't do when it comes to their own learning. But in some discussions that I've had more recently, my thinking's changed a little bit, in that maybe there is some shared responsibility if you're in the workplace, not only for the organisation to help potentially develop your skill sets, but for you to contribute back to that organisation. So what's your view of it?
I'd agree with the latter, Eric. I think that there is a shared responsibility, and I think as organisations that have a conscience and want to develop their people and to meet the demands of their businesses and the marketplace, acknowledging and identifying those gaps of knowledge is from, I think, from an organisation perspective, crucial. And also understanding their staff and understanding the desires of staff's own wishes for what they want to see for their own professional development. That's part of their responsibility, I think. I think the choice to actually do the learning, that comes down to the individual, because an organisation can say, okay, well, we've got this, we know we're going to go in this way, we'd like you to, go and do this course, or you need to do some further learning. And then the option is obviously to the individual to say yes or no. So that's where the individual's, I think, choice and will to do the learning is very personal and up to them, because they can say no.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that more, and it's just been recently where I've had people in my life, friends and family, that have done education and gone back and re-skilled, upskilled. I'm not sure what the best terminology is, but they've hit that wall and said, yeah, I need to do something else. I want a different career path. And yeah, that's highly individualistic, but that has consequences for where you work or potentially the people around you, because, once you've got familiar responsibilities, you're a single mom or single dad, or you're in a couple of some description, you've got kids, that you can't just stop working and decide, well, I'm going to go study full time and follow my dream, but I'm not going to pay any of the bills. Like it's difficult to follow certain pathways of learning. So I get that. I was going to add too, in that previous question, we talking about the learner and the business that you might be working for. Do you think the education system plays a significant role here? And what I mean by that is, I only got wind of the terminology of lifelong learning well into my formal career spaces, where people that had been in the world of work a lot longer than me constantly suggested do some training of whatever kind, keep yourself relevant. And I didn't understand what that meant until a lot later in life. And I think a love of learning has to get triggered off somewhere, and not to have a crack at or undermine formal learning from K to 12. You have to learn some fundamentals, and there's no escaping it. You have to learn how to write a sentence. Have to get some skills in using numbers and so on. But it's triggering an individual's curiosity to keep asking the why question, and that is easier said than done. And so, from your experience of it, because you've worked in the high school sector, and you've been a professional in the career development space, is that easier to say than to actually do on the ground, to get to inflame that passion for learning in people?
I think it depends on the individual, Eric. I think with the kids and students that I've dealt with, it's been a mixed bag. Some people, and everybody's different, some people innately know who they are and what they like. A lot of people, though, don't. And particularly when you've got kids coming through, yes, they're doing the rudimentary basics of reading and writing and arithmetic and learning how to be a person. So they're doing all of that. And then as you start going through senior schools, you're also going, okay, well, now how am I going to engage with the world? So it starts to have a different skill set. And they get their first job. And look, let's face it, most kids get their first job because they want the money. They want to go and spend. So there's not a lot in my experience that I've seen that go, all right, I know that this is where I want to go and this is the path. So a lot of the work that I know I did in the career development space was more around, what do you like? Not so much about trying to figure out a lifelong pathway. It is, what's your next step? And that's where it comes down to, what's next? What do you fundamentally like? Do you like being with people? Do you don't want to be with people? Do you like working on a computer? Do you like being outside? Do you like painting? Do you like creating? Do you like tech? It all comes down to, what do they like? And you have to allow space for people to discover that. Some people discover that through figuring out what they don't like, and that takes time. So finding that trigger that you're talking about is through exploration, is through experience. And I think that takes time. As I said, I think it's the rare individuals that come through that go, yes, I want to be a brain surgeon, or yes, I want to be a lawyer, that know. They're probably in a smaller percentage than the majority that are going, I think I like this, I think I like that, or I might try this, or I might try that.
Yeah, I could not disagree. In fact, at high school age, I had many an idea of what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up. It didn't end up going exactly the way that I thought. And the idea of experience as part of lifelong learning, and that you will learn as you gain experience in a role or gain experience in a vocation, that is as powerful, I would argue, as any kind of formal learning or trade, or it's being around the people that you need to be around with, because most jobs are people centric, and so you learn as you go. So yeah, fair enough.
I also wanted to point out too is that you might have an idea that this is what this looks like. I want to do this career and this is what I think it looks like. But you get into it and you go, oh, this isn't anything like I thought it was going to be. Or it might be, oh yeah, this is fantastic. So again, that lived experience is where the gold is. That's where you go, oh, is this for me? Am I leaning into it? Do I like it? Or is it, oh yeah, it's those kind of feelings and guides that you're looking for.
Yeah, I again agree. And I think for our young people coming through, asking them to know what that is out of high school is, I think, a little rough.
It's pretty hard.
And it's not a failing of the school system or parents or even the child or young person, that decides, well, I don't want to do a trade or I don't want to be at uni right now. That shouldn't be a failing. I think unfortunately there's judgment there. You can't escape that. But from an individual perspective, yeah, how the hell are you going to know that young what it is that you want to do for another 40 or 50 years? I think you'd want to be really self-actualized if you know that young exactly what you're going to do for 5 decades or more. And given that we're going to retire later and later in life, looks like we could be working for 50 plus years in careers.
Exactly. And the other thing too is that it's more than likely we know that people are going to chop and change careers, up to 7-8 times during their lifetime. So again, depending on life circumstances, you may have to step back a bit, or you may be able to go in and commit fully. So I think it's about your next steps and what you like to do. That's always the current question in my mind. Am I liking what I want to do? And look, I'm not saying that everything is perfect 100% of the time. We all have bad days, but you have a general sense of, I'm on purpose, I'm on track, and I'm moving forward. That is, I think, the pathway that we're all trying to look for.
Yeah, 100% agree. Now, let's, if we can, bring it back in from your experience and that lifelong learning from a leadership perspective. So to what degree do you think lifelong learning is a component of the leadership process as you've experienced it?
As I've experienced it, I think the exceptional leaders that I have worked with are always learning. They're always keeping an eye on what's happening in their world and in their fields. They're engaging with other peers in their fields. They're members of professional organisations who have CPD as part of their requirements to be members, requiring people to be up to date. So the leaders that I've worked with that have really done it well and understand people and understand their business have continued to educate themselves and have been quite open about the fact that they don't know everything, that they are still open to that learning, quite humble in some respects. So I think it's a key element of being an authentic and good leader.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, you do meet some people that think that it's all done and dusted and there's no more room for it. And I even outside of the work context, if you're not constantly picking up or learning something, then you're shutting down, your brain's shutting down, and that's not a good thing either. Because if you think you've got the answers to everything, it's not it's not part of the leadership process. And it's definitely on that narcissistic, sociopathic scale. If you think you've got the answer to everything, which I can clearly state I do not.
Me neither.
Annette, so just a couple of things here. What advice would you give regarding lifelong learning to someone who's potentially at a crossroads, thinking about where their learning needs to go, or as part of a toolkit for understanding what lifelong learning means? From your experience, what advice would you give to my audience here about the topic?
I think it really comes down to knowing yourself, knowing your values, and knowing where you want to contribute, and what lights that spark that we were talking about before in you. If you understand that, or if you don't understand that, exploring that, I think that's what helps you start to target the areas that you would like to further progress with education. When it comes to lifelong learning, you said this earlier, and I really agree with this statement. It isn't just about the formal education. It's about being in your life and experiencing your life, and being open to what comes at you, and being open to the learning experiences that happen formally and informally. Shutting down, I think, is the way that you stagnate. If you're not open and willing to listen and have your eyes open, then you really do yourself a disservice by shutting down. So I'd really just recommend opening, talking to people, networking. All of those things are really great strategies for finding where you might like to go next, and it's amazing what can pop up in front of you when you least expect it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I have to say, as a friend, I'm more than a little happy and proud, I guess, that you're taking the learning journey that you are. You've done awesome as a first year in a degree program that you're undertaking at the University of Southern Queensland. Have I got that right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So best of luck with that. And Annette, thank you for being on the podcast for the third time, mate. I appreciate this.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. I love it. It's great.
No worries, mate. Thanks. And for those listening, this has been the Talking Leadership TV podcast, episode 1. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode. Thanks for following the podcast. Please like, or better yet, subscribe to help me build the channel. Thanks again for supporting Talking Leadership TV, and I'll catch everyone on the next podcast.